I'm Ted Price. I'm President and CEO of Insomniac Games, and today I've been showing off a new build of Fuse. Fuse is a brand new cooperative 4-player shooter from Insomniac Games, and it can be played with 4 players, 3 players, 2 players, or even 1 player. But at all times you have 4 characters who are this overstrike team you're playing with through the game. And it centers around this team's pursuit of this volatile alien substance called Fuse. You discover it at the beginning of the game, and you also discover weapons powered by Fuse, each of which is completely different, and each of which is given to one of the 4 agents. We love making crazy weapons at Insomniac, and we've taken a lot of the DNA from our Ratchet games and Resistance and mix it all together and come up with 4 weapons that can be upgraded in various ways, so they're multifaceted, and weapons that are really complementary in terms of their shooter efficacy. So, for example, Dalton has a mag shield. It's this ferrofluid plus fuse mixture that creates this big shield that he can walk around with. His teammates can fire through the shield and take out enemies while being protected. But Dalton could also collect incoming projectiles and then turn them into kinetic energy and send out this blast wave which liquefies any nearby enemies. He can also upgrade it later to drop copies of the shield so that in an ambush situation you can actually be protected where there may be no cover in the first place. There are lots of ways you can combine the weapons. There are about 60 different combinations that we actually visibly reward in the game. For example, I could be Izzy shattering or crystallizing enemies. So when I use my shatter gun, it creates these crystalline structures and raises enemies up. This really sets them up well for another character or a player to take them out. So let's say I am Naya. I'm coating enemies with this warp rifle mixture, and I can trigger a chain of black holes. Well, those black holes pop off and then they shatter Izzy's crystallized enemies. We both get points, and we both feel good about actually having work together. But there are lots of different combinations where you can have 2, 3, or even 4 players working together to take down tough enemy setups in the game. Fuse is an agile shooter, so from the very beginning we wanted to make sure we weren't locking players to the ground and having them just ponderously move from place to place. We wanted to allow the agents to feel like agents, where they are climbing and infiltrating and doing all sorts of cool stuff, but at the same time there's a combat strategy involved. We want players to be able to get to the high ground and take advantage of enemies if they see those opportunities. There are also flanking paths that players can climb to or crawl to, which make combat very different. So we're trying to constantly give players different choices in terms of how they approach each combat and how they play each character. Well, the game's still stylized, and if you play it now, there's a lot of color in it. The characters themselves are still over the top in terms of who they are and their backstories. And we originally came up with 3 characters who looked slightly different, and we showed that off in 2011 as a very transparent window into our development process. And we continued to evolve the game. And part of the reason we went, say, a little darker, a little bit more dry with our humor, was because we wanted to match what we were doing with the weapons. And what we were doing with the weapons was making them much more hard-hitting, giving them more impact. Because we realized early on that the really campy, cartoony place that we'd started with the weapons was not working. They looked kind of cool, but it just wasn't fun to play. And at the core of every shooter has got to be a fantastic set of great weapons that enable the player to feel powerful when he's taking down enemies. And this is a very Insomniac game where we inject humor into the characters' personalities. And throughout the game there's a lot of emergent dialogue where the characters are talking back and forth about their backstories and giving each other crap as they're moving through. But the point is we want the characters to come to life, and then that really is done more easily with emergent dialogue versus these big ponderous cinematic scenes that tend to stop players in their tracks when they're playing along. I'm most proud of the fun factor in the game. When you're playing by yourself or playing with 1, 2, or 3 friends, it's a blast to actually try out different approaches to all of the setups in the game with these 4 very, very different characters. And because there's a progression system in the game, you can build those characters the way you want. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of how you play Fuse. But at the end of the day, it's about having that smile on your face after you and a few friends have taken on a really tough challenge and had a lot of fun succeeding. It's coming out on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, and you'll be able to pick it up May 28th here in the US.